Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to our last link. I know it's hard to believe, but don't worry, we're going to be getting together some this summer somehow. I'm not sure exactly, but y'all stay tuned. When we figure out a good way that's appropriate and safe to get together, we'll let you know. And don't wait on us. Feel free to get together with your friends or your small group at a park or something. Find a way that it doesn't make you a lawbreaker and that your parents are comfortable with. Ask them what they think and submit to them, and we will let you know how we can get together as a whole group as soon as we can. So that's coming. So today, our last link of the semester, we're in James chapter 3. Go ahead and turn there. And I want to tell you a story. I remember when I was younger, I wanted people to think, wow, Andy's smart. And one part of that was I wanted them to think, wow, he really knows some old music. That's one of the coolest ways to be smart, is to know old, not just poppy, trendy music, but some of the deep cuts of the out there kind of music. And I was studying some old music, and I was in the Suburban with my whole family. And this song came on, Don McLean's The Day the Music Died. It's this old song, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Kind of an obscure song. I'm a young guy. This is an old song. They're going to be impressed. I'm going to belt out this song. And it came on, and I was even leaning forward so that everybody could hear me real good, because I was in the way back of the Suburban. I leaned forward, and I was singing at the top of my lungs, drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And my big brother, turned around and looked at me like, and just made me feel like a complete idiot. It froze me in my tracks. And I was like, that was a little too much, wasn't it? And that was not very satisfying. And this was me wrestling with the question of, how do I let people know how smart I am? And I assumed it was going to be with me opening my mouth. But what if the best way for me to let people know how smart I am is to shut my mouth? And I think we all struggle with this in different ways. I think some of us open our mouths a little too much, trying to make people think we're funny, or that we try with obscure facts or things that are interesting that make people go, huh, how did he know that? He must watch a lot of History Channel or read a lot of books. Or maybe you want to impress people with how spiritual you are, that you always have a verse or something to say that you can chime in. And maybe it's in small group discussion or on Zoom, or when you and your friends are hanging out and you're not listening to everyone else so much as waiting for someone to take a breath because you're formulating your next comment. And as soon as you have an opening, you jump in there and you're wanting to impress people and wanting people to think, wow, you're so smart. And I think we all struggle with that. And what if the best way to let people know how wise we are is not to have our mouth open, but to have our mouth shut? There's this famous quote. It could be Abraham Lincoln or Mark Twain, but more likely Maurice Switzer, that says something to the effect of, there's variations of it, but the idea is better to keep your mouth shut and have people think you are stupid than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And this is actually biblical truth. Proverbs says it this way in Proverbs 17:28. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. What if the best way to let people know how wise you are is to keep your mouth shut? And what if the way Jesus did it was to keep his mouth shut at times? And what if what Jesus has to offer you is more satisfying than having people think, wow, how smart that person is? Turn with me to James chapter 3. And I want you to keep in the back of your mind, what is the way that you are tempted to jump into conversation? What is it that you struggle with? Wanting people to think, wow, he's so funny, or he's got so much obscure historical knowledge, or he's so spiritual. What are the ways that you are tempted to use your mouth to impress people with your wisdom or your smarts or your big brain? And listen to how he says it. James chapter 3, verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Who is wise and understanding among you? And I can just imagine this, some people going, ooh, me, I'm wise, I'm understanding. And we want to tell people how wise and understanding we are. And I imagine James saying, no, shut up. Look, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him not speak it, not tell me how wise you are. It says, let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. So that makes me think of the whole book of James. It's not about your ear. It's not all about listening, because remember in James 1 he said, don't be merely hearers of the word, but what? Doers also. And then remember in James chapter 2, he said, you say you have faith? Well, that's great. Show me your faith without works. I dare you. You can't do it. I'll show you my faith by my good works. So it's not all about the ear, it's about doing. And it's not all about what you say, it's about doing. That's authentic faith. And that's authentic wisdom, as we see here. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show it. And remember, he just got done talking about how the tongue is a restless, untamable evil. Like you're in a runaway semi-truck barreling down a hill that had the brake lines cut, and you're just out of control and you don't know how to stop it. And the idea is, I wonder if some people are running their mouth about how wise they are and trying to impress people. And he says, no. Show it. Show your wisdom by your actions. And if you find yourself quick to speak and impress people, look into your heart and see what's really in there. Seems to be the line of thinking here in verse 14, because he says, but if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. So he's saying, if you're quick to talk, it might be because there's envy and selfish ambition. Like you're looking at other people and going, look at all the attention they get. I'm envious of their attention. Or selfish, like you're not thinking about other people or how your words can help anyone. You're just thinking about how your words can build you up. And so he says, do not boast, or you could say, do not brag or lie about the truth. What is bragging? It's saying in whatever words you choose to use, the idea is, I want everybody to see, I am awesome. He says, don't do that. And then don't deny the truth or lie about the truth. Well, what's the lie? Well, the lie could be, I am awesome, which is a lie. Or the lie could be, no, this isn't coming from envy or selfish ambition. The things I'm saying so much comes from a good place in my heart that I'm trying to help people, and this comes from God, and I'm just sharing what he's given me. And he's saying, no. If that stuff's really in your heart, don't you lie about that. And if you think, no, seriously, comes from above, from God. Look, it says in verse 15, such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, and of the devil. Okay, wow. First, notice that there's quotes around wisdom. He says, such wisdom, and a lot of times when you see quotes like that, it's people saying, not really wisdom. So he says, such wisdom, not really wisdom. This kind of wisdom, the wisdom that you say you have, but if it really comes from envy and selfish ambition, it's not really wisdom, but that kind of wisdom, what does he say about it? Does not come from heaven, but it's earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. So if you think this is coming out of your heart, and you're deceiving yourself to say it's heavenly, spiritual, and godly, it's actually earthly, natural, and demonic. That seems pretty harsh, right? And you might think, well, it's not that big of a deal. This is just who I am. I'm talkative. Yeah, I like attention, and you think it's cute. It's not cute. Look at how he talks about it. He says in verse 17, if you think, like he's already, in verse 16, as he paints this picture, I want you to think about, he's going to make the case of why it's not just some cute thing that you want attention. He's going to emphasize the seriousness of it. And you can often tell how bad something is by how bad the things around it are. Like imagine you have this new boyfriend and you're like, oh, he's so dreamy. And he goes, hey, I want you to meet some of my friends. And you go and you hang out, you meet his friends and goes, here's the guys. And you see every single one of them are constant nose pickers and wedgie pullers. Hey, and then you look at him and you're like, because he's doing the same thing, and when you see him surrounded by all of it, it shows the quality and character of him, and you go, oh no. And so now he's going to do this with this wisdom that comes from envy and selfish ambition. He's going to show it in its context and its surroundings to show you what it really is. So he says in verse 16, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, look around at what surrounds it. He says, there you will also find disorder and every evil practice. So it could mean that kind of wisdom is like these other things, that it's just like every kind of evil. It's just like disorder. Or it could mean that it actually leads to those things. That, watch, wherever you see envy and selfish ambition, just wait. It's going to lead to every other kind of evil. And it reminds me of what he just got done saying about the tongue in verse 6. Remember, the tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire. That it can be, the mouth, when used incorrectly, can be this sort of portal into all sorts of evil. So he says, yeah, it's not just cute for you to go, I'm talkative, I like the attention. He says, no, this is evil. And where it is, there's also every kind of evil. And he says you'll find disorder. That means like fighting and stuff, because there's not peace. And why is there disorder? Well, if there's envy, you're envious of somebody else, you might be tempted to talk down on them to build you up. Tear them down to build you up, right? And so there's fighting, there's disorder. And now we've seen all the different things of what wisdom is not, what true wisdom is. He's been describing this false wisdom. Now what is wisdom? He says in verse 17, but, so he's contrasting all this false wisdom. Now we get true wisdom. But the wisdom that really does come from heaven is first of all, and here it is, the very first thing that is attributed to true wisdom. You want to know if what's in your heart is true wisdom that you're trying to share with someone, or false wisdom that you're just trying to push on everyone to build you. If you want to know what the difference is, he says, look, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. And I want you to think about in terms of pure water. If you have a glass of water but mixed in is some sludge and dirt and mud, you don't want to drink that. It's mixed up, and sometimes we have mixed motives in our heart. And he's saying, for you to say I'm using this wisdom that's from God to help people, but you actually have motives in your heart of lifting yourself up and for people to see how awesome you are, he says, no, that's not pure. And that, for me, is a gut check for God to say, is the things that you feel like you have to say to people all the time, if it's not pure, then shut your mouth. If it's not me talking to them through you, then shut your mouth. If you're trying to impress them by how spiritual you are, then shut your mouth. If it's not pure, it's not from God. And what else is it? It's pure and peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial, and sincere. And he summarizes it with this word in verse 18. If it's true wisdom, you're a peacemaker. You're trying to make peace, not fighting or pitting people against each other, showing you're better. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. So it leads to righteousness. And I'm reminded of where it says in chapter 1, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because it does not bring about the righteousness of God. And this does bring about the righteousness of God. How do I let people know how smart I am, or to prove how wise I am? Or some of you have more pure hearts and you're wrestling with it more honestly. How do I obey God in letting it be really his wisdom and not my own? Sometimes it means you keep your mouth shut. Just like Jesus, it says in Isaiah 53:7 that points to Jesus. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. He didn't always keep his mouth shut, but when he did, it was out of obedience to his Father, and when he spoke, out of obedience to his Father.